Let's call this again. Good morning. We are here for the Planning and Zoning Commission on Tuesday, December 9th at 9 a.m. I am Chair Katie Nasser. All who are able, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's start with the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion on the floor?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, call for any corrections, additions? Yes, Ms. Jones.
I don't know why everybody's looking at me. Okay. I just had a few mostly grammatical changes. On page 2 of 24, it's the fourth bullet point under 2. It says requiring large lots means the use of septic systems can continue into the future rather than having to turn, I think it needs a 2 in there, to turn to the creation of sewer treatment systems. And then on page 5 of 24, I just have a question where Chairman King called toward the top, where Chairman King called for a 10-minute recess, but then we were called back 5 minutes later. Is that correct? Did we only take 5 minutes?
It was probably 10 minutes. We'll go back and look.
Okay. And then page 7 of 24, toward the bottom, the second bullet point under Rob Houchins. And this may just be how he worded it, but it said the reason there's a time frame to allow testing on generators is to correct the corrections. Is that just how he said it? Correct the corrections?
I'm getting a nod from Christy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's see. And then going on to page 17 of 24. Toward the top where it says Commissioner Allison asked in the study, is there anything looked at? Maybe anything that looked at where you have opposing turn? And then under still in number 1, the last part of number 1 where it said under Commissioner Nasser asked, going a couple lines down, it says, at what point the left turns required, and it should be turn is required, or an apostrophe S there. And then the same page toward the bottom, the last section, the third bullet point, it says, kind of halfway down, it says that Mr. Dalton has referenced, it should be referenced that there is a line. And I think I'm almost done. Okay, and then on page 23 of 24, toward the bottom where it says Judge Vogel congratulated Commissioner King on his many years of service, and should that be sitting instead of setting?
Yes.
Okay, and then my last one is just a question. It's kind of the opposite question that I had last time. On page 24 of 24, where it has Katie Nasser, chairman, because Greg King actually resided over that meeting, should he?
Vice Chair. Yeah.
Should he sign it since he actually presided over that meeting, or no? Or does it switch immediately to you?
It's my understanding, and
I'm sorry, say that again.
where it has that Katie Nasser chairman, but actually at the beginning, it was actually presided over by Chairman Greg King at the time. So should it be like exiting Chairman Greg King that approved them?
She was voted in by you all.
So it changes immediately?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I just want to check on that. And I'm good.
Thank you.
I had one.
Yes, Ms.
On
Kraus.
page 3, the third line down, Kraus has an E on the end. If you just take the E off.
How far down? Oh, right here at the top. Where it lists-
Third line.
Take the E off. Thank you. Anything else?
I have some.
Yes. Mr. Douglas.
Page 5 of 24. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth paragraph down, where Commissioner Hampton asked, then Director Fisher replies, it says, as in, instead. Should there, in be taken out? Or as in, instead? I don't think that makes sense. Also, on page 15 of 24, motion carried by unanimous voice vote. The paragraph after that, after division, you just need a period after that. End of the sentence. And then on page 19 of 24, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About the fifth paragraph down where Director Fisher asked on page 8 of the traffic impact study, after warrant on, Hounds Lane is spelled wrong. It's Hounz, not Hounds, Hounds. HAU, I'm sorry, Hounds. Yes, but it's right here.
Oh, the last one.
Right there. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other changes, corrections? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the approval of the minutes with changes made? And second? We had a second by Ms. Kraus.
Second's right down
Ms. Kraus. And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, before we move on to the first docket, if I can have all the staff sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Barge, you're up.
Docket PZ-25-025, an application has been filed by Gulfstream Development TriStar Construction and Development Group, LLC, for a zoning map amendment and development plan on property located at 1000 block of Commerce Parkway, LaGrange. The application has also filed a waiver of Section 6.3 of the subdivision regulations sidewalk requirement. The property is 9 acres and currently zoned R2 residential district with a proposed zoning of C3 general business district.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Anna Barge, Senior Planner, and we're here today for a zoning map amendment, development plan, and waiver for the 1000 block of Commerce Parkway in LaGrange. If you're wondering why they don't have an address, it's because it's currently undeveloped, and once they, if they get through this process and they apply for building permits, that's when they will be issued addresses. So here's the docket that Ms. Edgar just read. So the existing zoning is R2 residential and the proposed zoning is C3 commercial. The land use is currently undeveloped and the parcel is 9 acres. There is no site history on the property. So the pre-application meeting was on May 13th, with the neighborhood meeting being on June 16th, and the technical review committee being in August. And the agenda was posted to the county website on October 30th, with APO notices mailed on November 11th, and that's adjoining property owner notices. The public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on November 20th, and the sign was posted on the property on November 25th. So here is the parcel in question. It's just south of the Oldham Oaks Apartments entrance. And then here's the interstate here. And this is Commerce Parkway, with the Baptist Church being right here. So as you can see, there's a variety of zonings. Right now it's zoned R2, which is this yellow, and it has C3 zoning on either side of it, and C2 zoning to the north, with R4, which is what's required for those apartments up there. And the CO zoning is on the interstate. So the Oldham County Future Land Use Map predicts that the use of this tract will be commercial and industrial. So that's the 2019 Future Land Use Map. The 2025/2026, our proposed comprehensive plan Future Land Use Map, has the exact same thing for this parcel. So the proposed plan meets all standards in the Oldham County zoning ordinance, with the exception of the waiver that they requested. So here's that future land use map. And this is the commercial industrial, these zigzag lines, and these red are commercial. I included the TRC comments in your packet. So the applicant is seeking a zoning change from R2 residential to C3 general business district to allow for the proposed commercial contractor park. According to zoning ordinance section 170-010, the purpose of C3 general business district is to provide for appropriate locations for a wide variety of businesses, commercial, mass merchant, and miscellaneous service activities, but does not include land uses characterized by extensive warehousing or frequent trucking activity. According to subsection 6.3F of the Oldham County subdivision regulations, for both commercial and office subdivisions, sidewalks shall be provided on both sides of all streets, and the applicant is requesting a waiver of section 6.3 subsection F of the Oldham County sidewalk regulations, because they believe that this would create a sidewalk to nowhere, and similarly situated lots do not have sidewalks. The proposed plan has 9 buildings ranging from 10,000 square feet to 23,500 square feet. And that's one of the reasons they don't have an address yet, because our GIS manager will work with them. So this is why we don't address things before they're developed. So the gross building footprint of the area is 118,200 square feet, and the maximum lot coverage for C3 zoning is 40%. The proposed plan has 30% lot coverage. The maximum impervious surface for C3 zoning is 65%, and the proposed plan has 43.7% impervious surface. So here is the sign that I put up before the snow. And here's another picture, as you can see, R2 to C3. And then it's really dark on this screen. There wasn't good lighting that day outside. And then this is facing away from LaGrange, heading towards the health department, with Oldham Oaks on this side. So here is the plan that you were all provided. So Oldham Oaks is this way, with Commerce Parkway this way, and I-71 to the south. So here are the buildings that they're proposing. As you can see, there's 2 in the front, 2 on the side, and 5 in the back. And here's slightly more zoomed in. So here's their current zoning district, our zoning ordinance regulations for R2. And this is what is permitted in R2. And then this is C3 zoning ordinance and what is permitted in C3. So I have everything in the white right here, and as well as this column. And then this is the conditional uses. If they want to do something over here, they would have to go through Board of Adjustments for approval of that conditional use. And here's our zoning ordinance, or our subdivision regulation, section 6.3 Section F, for commercial and office subdivisions, sidewalks shall be provided on both sides of all streets. So in summary, they are asking for a zoning map amendment, development plan, and a waiver. For the zoning map amendment, they're requesting the zoning map amendment on approximately 9 acres from R2 residential district to C3 general business district. The potential binding elements is the approval only applies to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2, there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and the engineer's office. And 3, the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at time of construction plan approval. And then we have the development plan. Oh, and also this zoning map amendment will go through the city of LaGrange. They are in the city limits there. So the potential binding elements for the development plan is the approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing, and there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineer's Office. Number 3, the plan must comply with all state, county, and federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at time of construction plan approval. Now, we can add landscaping and lighting plan will be required. That was told to them at TRC, I believe, but they will be required to do that if you want to add that as a binding element. And then for the waiver, an applicant is requesting approval of a waiver of subdivision regulation 6.3F, requirement of sidewalks in the city limits of LaGrange. So the approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 19th Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Silman.
Good morning, Jim Silliman, Oldham County Engineer. Really, my comments are very similar to what you would have read in the TRC comments, except that there was some clarification made on the trip generation. And when we met originally about this site, it's kind of unique and it's hard to define just from our Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation guidebook how much traffic is going to be generated by a warehouse. And it's a blend of different uses. So in that case, we really want to get the input from the applicant on that, which they provided, and they provided a traffic assessment, which you should see in your packet. And ultimately, I think I agree with the trip generation they've shown, and with the dual entrances that they've shown, that kind of breaks up those left turns coming in. And so I agree that their statement that there's not improvements required on Commerce Parkway at this time. Again, other than that, the comments regarding stormwater are similar to TRC in that the land disturbance will be greater than an acre, so they'll be required to obtain a KYR-10 permit from the Kentucky Division of Water, as well as our Oldham County Stormwater Quality Management and Erosion Control Permit. They've shown the detention basins, which will ensure their design or their engineer designs in accordance with our stormwater runoff ordinances and includes the water quality components. We also noted that there appear to be 2 blue line streams, one on either side of the project, but based on the preliminary plan, those don't appear to be affected by the development. If based on a review of further construction plans indicates that those are impacted, we'd coordinate with the Division of Water and the Army Corps of Engineers to ensure those are treated appropriately. And then Ms. Barge mentioned that this is in the city of LaGrange. As such, they'll also be required to get approval for those 2 entrances from the Corey Rusnick, the Director of Public Works in the city.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Mr. Douglas.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. Noticed on their plan, and we'll ask the applicant that, part of their parking area is gravel listed on the developmental plan. Is that creating any issues for you as far as the stormwater runoff to the detention basins? Or is
For
it better for you?
stormwater runoff, not so much. However, I'm glad you pointed that out. We'll need to look at it because there are regulations in our comprehensive zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations that indicate from the front of the buildings towards the street has to be paved, and then behind that should just be a non-dusting surface. So it's more of a dust issue. If it's typically we allow them to use a millings or some aggregate that has a coating on it so it doesn't dust, but we could address that at construction plan review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? Not at this time? Okay. We will head to presentation by the applicant. If there is anyone that you think will speak or answer questions, if you'd like to go ahead and have them sworn in.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, good morning. Mike Swansburg and Smith, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. I do have some folks here with me today. We just get everybody to stand up at the same time, and we can all be sworn in just in case anyone does speak.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right. Madam Chair, members of the commission, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Baxter, Ms. Edgar, good morning, everybody. Again, I'm here on behalf of Gulfstream Development and TriStar Construction to talk about a office park approval on Commerce Parkway. So I think it's pretty appropriate. Again, we're talking about a commercial park on Commerce Parkway. Seems to be pretty apt given the name of the road itself and what I believe it for it to be its ultimate intent. So let's talk again about those requests. Much of what I'm going to talk about has already been discussed, but for the record purpose, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I put it in the record. And again, the applicants here are asking you all to approve 3 requests, and Ms. Barge and Mr. Silman have both talked about that. The first one is an amendment to the Oldham County zoning map for the parcel located, as we've talked about, at that 1,000 block of Commerce Parkway. It's highlighted in blue here on the screen for you all. And to amend that from, again, R2 to C3. I'll talk a little bit about why that makes sense here in a minute. Number 2 is, again, a proposal to develop the parcel. So the development plan, in addition to the zoning map amendment, we would ask that you all approve the development plan as presented to you all. And then 3, we talk a little bit, and I will discuss somewhat about that waiver of the section 6.3 of the subdivision regulations relating to the sidewalk installation there along Commerce Parkway. So let's go ahead and get into it and talk about these individually. Guiding standard, I always talk about this. Mr. Fisher can probably do my presentation for me at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and make it in this context. Start off with the law because I think that's appropriate. Kentucky law provides that, quote, before any map amendment is granted, the Planning Commission must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one or more of the following apply. And in this case, I would submit that sub A, that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. That is KRS chapter 1 or KRS 100.213 sub 1A. So here again is the proposed commercial contractor part. That's you've already seen that with Ms. Barge's slides. Just go ahead and reiterate to you here. We may come back to it if we need to at this point, but again, we're talking about a commercial park for a variety of different uses that may be had once it is constructed, assuming, of course, that you all approve that here today. So, there's our comprehensive plan. I've got it faded, though, because my understanding is it's going to change sooner than later, so it's fading out. That's why it looks like that. Land use objective LU-1-1. Let's talk about what it is, though. At this point, the countenances that future land uses are compatible with surrounding land uses. And I would submit that this project is compatible. We'll talk a little bit about that more in a second with adjacent development through the building of a commercial park in an area that already supports commercial activity. If you drive along Commerce Parkway and you drive west toward Louisville, you can actually see there are other areas along Commerce Parkway that are already developed and used for commercial purposes. So this is not going to be one of those areas that sticks out compared to much of the rest of the road heading in that direction. We think that it's compatible with adjacent development. Land use objective LU-3-1, which also encourages support of existing business retention and growth compatible with adjacent land uses and the availability of community facilities and services. This project is located in an area that already has existing infrastructure to support the project, and It is also designed, and this will get into the third one here, it is also designed to help support businesses here in Oldham County, or to encourage or attract other businesses who may want to locate here in Oldham County. That also comports with Business and Industry Objective BI-1-2, which asks proposals to support existing business and industry to thrive and grow in Oldham County. I forgot the quote at the end. This project is, again, designed to attract businesses to locate near LaGrange and support companies doing business in Oldham County. Whether they are based here or whether they want to do business here, they will have a location to do that, and that's the goal of this particular project. Let's talk about, again, that existing classification, appropriate versus inappropriate. So I would go ahead and argue first that the existing classification is inappropriate. My color is different. I pulled it from the GIS than what you've already seen on the screen here. But presently, this 1,000 block of Commerce Parkway, this is the property we're talking about, is zoned R2, which the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance says is appropriate for low-density, detached, single-family areas and neighborhoods. Section 060010. So this is actually located here. So we're talking currently about a property that is zoned to have low-density, detached, single-family neighborhoods adjacent to C3 properties, C2 properties, and the interstate to the south. Again, it borders, like I said, I-71 to the south, C3 to the east and west. Put my little X's on there, and the C2 development to the north. In other words, as I would submit, the current R2 designation doesn't properly convey the realities of the surrounding area and its location within it. It would be weird to put commercial areas on either, all of it, and the interstate, and then have a traditional single-family detached single-family home subdivision right here in the middle on this 9 acres. It would seem to be odd to put that here in the middle along Commerce Parkway. So I would argue that it's inappropriate based upon the realities of the properties around it. So why is the classification appropriate? Again, as we talked about, there's already C3 on both sides to the east and west of this particular property, which allow for, you've already heard, a wide variety of businesses, commercial, mass merchant, and miscellaneous service activities. That is Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Section 170-010. And to reiterate, the parcels located, again, on either side are C3 presently. And we just ask that you all make a recommendation to amend the zoning map so that this will be C3 and bring it in line with the neighbors on either side of it. So that's basically the short of it. We'll go back here real quick to the actual development plan itself. So here again is the development plan. This is what we're talking about. At the end of the day, I think you all have bigger copies on than maybe on your screen in terms of what we're actually looking at before I get into the waiver here. So this is, again, we're asking for an amendment to the zoning map to change this to C3 so that they can build this project, which is commercial in nature, will allow for a variety of businesses to locate here in Oldham County in some form or fashion. I want to talk real quick about that waiver. It seems a little odd, but we want to go ahead and point out why we think this is appropriate here. So the current authority for the commission under the Oldham County subdivision regulations and why you all have the ability to make this change. Section 6.2 of the subdivision regulations, which I attempted to highlight using a touchpad, so I apologize for any kind of waivers or anything like that on the yellow there on the right. The commission shall review a non-residential subdivision proposal when it consists of 4 or more individual lots utilized for office, commercial, or industrial purposes. You've already heard in this case, although it's not necessarily sub-parcels, there are individual buildings that will be up to 9 buildings that will be on this particular lot. And that's why we look at this and say that this is something you all can review in this context. So again, here's that proposed lot we talk about. And again, if we're going to take a reading of it to say that these are individual lots in some way, although they're not parcels per se, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got 9 buildings that are going to be within this that may have 9 distinct addresses, depending on how it works out, assuming you all approve this and it gets addressed. But we do have, those individual buildings on here, which again makes it, we believe, fall under that section 6.2, or at least that's what we believe the argument is. Okay, so You've already heard of this. Section 6.3 of the subdivision regulations mandates that for commercial and office subdivision, sidewalks shall be provided on both sides of all streets. And we respectfully are asking you all to grant a waiver of this requirement. So, the standard, the default under the subdivision regulations when you build a subdivision in this county is that if you got a road that goes into it, you need to have sidewalks on both sides of the street. In many ways, encourage pedestrian use, right? I mean, particularly if you're in a subdivision, you want to encourage people to get out and not just use the roads for travel via car, but you also want to encourage people to walk through neighborhoods, et cetera. This isn't exactly your traditional subdivision, though. We're talking about a commercial office park located on Commerce Parkway. So the area that I've highlighted in red, and I wrote where the sidewalk ends there, pursuant to the subdivision regulations, the applicants would be required to install a sidewalk as it stands right now along the northern border of the property and adjacent to Commerce Parkway. So again, Commerce Parkway runs here, and I'll highlight it more for you here in a second. This would be the northern edge of the property. So what you would end up having to do here is you would have to build a sidewalk along this side here of Commerce Parkway before you get to the parking lots and then the buildings. But we're looking for a waiver of that regulation. I'll explain why in a minute. But Section 9.1, for your benefit of that subdivision regulation, provides that the commission, quote, may reduce or otherwise grant waivers from the requirements of these regulations whenever it encounters the situations described below. And then it identifies at least two areas. The one that I've highlighted for you, which I believe is appropriate here, is that the design, innovation, and large-scale development, adding these regulations may be modified by the commission in the case of plans for complete neighborhoods or other design innovations which, in the commission's opinion, still achieve the basic objectives of these regulations. So there may be opportunities at times where you get a plan that is put in front of you where, for example, it's either a complete neighborhood that may have some type of particular use to it, or there may be some innovation or some design feature or some other feature that may, in many ways, we believe, still meet the basic objectives of the regulations. Again, encouraging that pedestrian traffic in some way, shape, or form through those areas is arguably what the point of the sidewalks are. So as a practical matter, I've highlighted for you the area that would be developed as part of this plan. And Ms. Barge talked about this. There is one argument to be made that the regulation would require the applicants to install a sidewalk to nowhere along the southern side here of Commerce Parkway. Neither the east nor west sides at this point have sidewalks. There is development up further here on Commerce Parkway, but there's no sidewalk that goes down on this side of Commerce Parkway. So what you're going to do is, if you don't grant the waiver, the developer is going to have to figure out a way, in addition to reconfiguring the plan, to build a sidewalk that essentially ends here and goes nowhere. It may be at some point there could be some backfilling at this point, but then there's no connection. We would submit over here to areas that don't have the sidewalks built already. So again, where are the sidewalks going if they're built on this particular side? I think that's one issue. And as I mentioned, and it's really problematic for the design itself, of course, if you require the applicant to install those sidewalks along the border, it will require a complete redesign of the proposal. As the various right-of-ways implicated by the sidewalk would push that usable space downward for the development much further south. So again, what you're going to see here is this is where the sidewalks have to go. Everything to the south of it would have to go this way because of all the right-of-ways that would be that would have to come into play with the sidewalks, et cetera. And so you're now talking about a proposal then that would have to be completely redone and may not in fact be feasible at that point simply because you won't have the land to deal with. You've got the interstate to the south. There's only so far you can go to the south before you're running into the interstate. So again, there's a practical problem. In addition to sidewalks being in the middle of nowhere, there's a problem with how the use of this land would be achieved if you had to put the sidewalk in on the southern end of Commerce Parkway. I put this picture on here because this gets back to, again, Section 9.1B of the subdivision regulations, which says that the objectives, in fact, if the objectives have already been, in many ways, met by a particular design or some other feature, then you all may grant a waiver. And I would submit to you all, the good news for us in this sense is that the sidewalks already exist along Commerce Parkway. They just exist on the northern side. And that trail runs all the way from downtown LaGrange, all the way out to Kentucky 393, and then north of, along Kentucky 393. So there is actually a sidewalk along Commerce Parkway, which achieves the real purpose of having pedestrian traffic or running or hiking or whatever it is folks might want to do along that trail that they already do now, but it wouldn't require them to build it on the southern side, which is the property here, and it still meets that same basic objective. So this isn't a situation where you have no sidewalks at all. You, in fact, will have a sidewalk. It's just going to be on one side of the road as opposed to both sides. The other issue that I might point out in many ways, although it's anecdotally more than anything else, is to the extent that there may be some concerns that if you put sidewalks on both sides, you're going to double or significantly increase the pedestrian traffic along a roadway right now that in many ways serves as a side artery to I-71, particularly if there is any backup of any kind along I-71 here. And so what you run the risk that with the increased pedestrian traffic on both sides, now you're actually putting people at risk potentially of the traffic that flows along here, in many cases upwards of 45 and 55 miles an hour in this particular section of the county. So there is some other concern about putting it on both sides of this, and whether or not you're going to have that conflict between pedestrian traffic and vehicle traffic, and whether that leads to additional issues. There is a consideration too, Mr. Silman brought it up, I just want to make sure it's highlighted because we did talk a lot about it after TRC, and there was a lot of effort done by the developer to address this issue. After that TRC meeting, the applicants and their engineer had multiple discussions with the staff about the proposed two entrance concept for this project, neither of which would fall directly across the Oldham Parks Road. And so there was some concern about whether or not that would be problematic. That led to a traffic assessment. A traffic assessment ultimately determined that actually was not going to be a problem. And you heard Mr. Silman talk about that issue. But again, there was a traffic assessment done, I think it's part of your packet, that did say, study the impact of potential trips generated by the development and whether the creation of the two entrances adjacent to but not across from the Oldham Oaks Road would have any negative impact. And the conclusion, which I attempted to highlight, was that the impact would be minimal and concluded, quote, no mitigation for roadway capacity is necessary because of this development. So ultimately, the number of trips that were potentially generated by the development didn't necessitate a redesign of the entranceway. At least a complete redesign of the entranceway. There was some slight manipulation, curvature, et cetera, of at least one of the entrances, but there was not a complete redesign necessary for this particular project. So in summary, again, appreciate your time. We respectfully request, again, three ultimate approvals that we are seeking from you all. The first one being that the commission approve an amendment to the Oldham County zoning map to designate the parcel located at the 1000 block of Commerce Parkway as C3 from the current designation of R2 on the basis that it comports with the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, particularly those areas I highlighted for you all a few minutes ago, and because the current zone classification is inappropriate. That's the first request. Second request is that the commission approve the development plan for this project as presented because, in addition to the point outlined above, it complies with the Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance and the subdivision regulations. Again, pursuant to at least that waiver that we're talking about here in a minute, which is number 3. And that the commission grant the applicants a waiver of section 6.3 of the regulations because the practicalities of constructing a sidewalk along the northern border of the property makes the project infeasible, because it establishes a sidewalk to nowhere, and because the objectives of the regulation we believe are met already by the existing walking trail sidewalk along the north side of Commerce Parkway directly across from the property. Those are the three requests that we've got. And those are the three requests that we humbly submit to you all today to approve. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done with my presentation, and we are open to any questions that the commission might have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. We'll get back to the questions in just a little bit. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the applicant? Seeing none. At this time, is there anyone who has questions or would like to give testimony opposing the applicant? All right. Seeing none, we're going to move into questions by the commissioners for staff, applicant at this time. Anyone with questions? Ms. Ms. Jones.
And this is for you. Is there a way for people to safely get to the walkway on Commerce? I know there's like several crosswalks to nothing right now. Do you connect to any of those, or is there a safe way out of this area to get over to there if someone wanted to walk?
So that I don't want to speak necessarily for the county or for the state in this context, but I know crosswalks are generally a prerogative of either the county or the state in some context, depending on the traffic and the needs, or ultimately a study done by the state, and whether that's in terms of an actual designated crosswalk. So the developer doesn't have a plan at this point to put in a crosswalk, but that would have to be something that the state, Mr. Silman can correct me if I'm wrong, at least the county or the state would have to sign off on something to that effect if that were going to be, because it is in fact a crossover of a either state or county maintained road.
So we typically wouldn't install a mid-block crossing, and when I say mid-block, I mean one that's not at an intersection. And I don't have the plans in front of me for the highway or the Allen Lane alignment, but when they improve that intersection at Allen Lane, where of course Independence Village is, the apartments where they have built sidewalks across their frontage, I suspect there will be a crosswalk at that location. It's a good intersection. Now, of course, that's quite a ways west of it, but it adds to that connectivity, and that where I think would be where the sidewalk is, or not sidewalk, a crosswalk, or if the city were to install anything closer to the east, potentially where the library and Holiday Inn are. So.
Okay. But, so do any of these proposed concrete walks, do they go to Commerce Parkway? I mean, it doesn't look like on the here that you can get to Commerce Parkway from the sidewalks. But also, is there the type of businesses you think will be here? Are they businesses where people will be there all day, where they would want to walk on their lunch breaks, or is it not that type of businesses?
So, and again, just talking to the owners and developers on this one, we don't anticipate that this is the type of development where you would have a number of people who are going to be sitting there all day long, for example, that might do very much like you said, which is take that lunch break and go on a walk, whatever. It's a pretty transient location in terms of, again, if you've got contractors or whomever else might be there, they're probably going to be gone on jobs, et cetera. So the number of people who may be fixed at that location during the day may be relatively small in the grand sense. So I don't know that there would be a whole lot of pedestrian traffic generated by this particular program or parcel that would warrant a whole lot of that. But again, that wouldn't be our call. That would have to be in conjunction with the governing bodies who would have to see that. But I don't foresee, unlike a subdivision where people obviously live and they're at home and they're after work or whatever else or during the day, that makes more sense. Whereas here again, I don't anticipate that type of pedestrian traffic from the people who might be here.
But we're not always just asking for, the intent isn't to provide a sidewalk for that user. It's a connectivity across the whole corridor. So again, I mentioned we've got sidewalk that was installed by the Independence Village developer. So those folks, if they want to walk down, the intent is to start, while it's a sidewalk to nowhere now, and there are other sidewalks like this that you'll see across the county, the intent is to piece these in and ultimately have a sidewalk, or if the city or county wants to create the final connection, they don't have to build the entire sidewalk. They just have to fill in a few gaps. So you'd have, and the health department, we recognize the health department doesn't have sidewalk. Why they didn't have to build one with theirs, I don't know. But there's another user that could walk in towards LaGrange and utilize this piece.
Okay, and I just had one more question. It looks like all the parking spots are, to the north side. Now, why do the buildings on the south not have parking spots?
Jason Baker, 1535 Frederick Street, Owensboro, Kentucky. The buildings in the back are intended to be accessory to the front buildings, like a warehouse used for like a contractor's office. That's the design intent. So there's really not a parking requirement for that type of use. And with it being that area back there is proposed as gravel, we don't typically show striping parking in that area. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Sullivan, while we've got you up front here, I've got a couple of questions. One, in tagging on to the other commissioners' comments about sidewalk, has there been any discussion at the county level, or with City of LaGrange for that matter, with putting a multi-use bike and walk trail on the south side of Commerce Parkway at any time in the future? Has there been any discussion about that at all?
Not that I'm aware of, and it's particularly not a multi-use. You know, typically I think we see the wider multi-use on one side and a 4 or 5 foot concrete sidewalk on the other, which is how it's laid out now. And there's a little bit more question in that now, I guess, with the recently completed Commerce Parkway traffic study that was accepted by both the fiscal court and City of LaGrange recently. If there were to be improvements in this area, how would it affect the sidewalk? Would they have to rip out a brand new sidewalk? And we'd hate to see that. So I think the two responses to that are, one, and Mr. Swansburg was saying that a construction of a sidewalk would potentially push the layout south. I don't know that it would if you built it in the right of way, because right now the designed layout doesn't encroach into the 100-foot Commerce Parkway right of way. So if you could build it in the right of way, then it doesn't have any impact. The alternative, though, is if there's a potential for widening Commerce Parkway in the near future and including the turn lane in the center, how does that affect a potential sidewalk? Maybe an alternative would be to, instead of building the sidewalk, provide a fee in lieu of for that cost, you know, if that makes sense. So you've done that on other projects where instead of building a turn lane immediately because a future project may conflict with that turn lane, like the D.W. Griffith Event Center, have the applicant put money in escrow for future development of that sidewalk, so they're not having to build it now and it be removed.
That was the
That was
first
a long
question.
answer, sorry.
That's a long answer, but that's a good answer, and the answer is really there's been nothing showing up on any formal county Department of Highway or LaGrange Department of Streets that shows a multi-use path on the south side of Commerce Parkway, and that's what I was getting at, is whether we needed to show that or have these folks show that for future development, and the answer to that is apparently not at this time.
Correct.
Okay. The second question is, I noticed they have two entrances in, which I favor very much, not putting the single entrances across from the apartment complex, but those entrances appear to be two-way entrances in and out. And are you comfortable, as the engineer, with just a 15-foot radius, knowing that these, where it joins Commerce Parkway, because these are going to be warehouses and having large truck units coming in?
No, I agree with you. Typically, we would require, and I think that the state standard is around 35 feet.
I think it's 25 to 35.
You could probably get away with 20 or 25, but we could look at that at construction plan approval time.
I think that would be a wise thing to do. Yeah. They look awful small for two-way entrance into a facility like this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Douglas.
Stay close. Mr. Swansburg. I'm trying to grasp a handle on the contractor's park. And I believe it was mentioned that you said that on conditional uses, if it's a contractor's equipment storage, they would have to go, or somebody mentioned it, they would have to, Anna did, have to go to the Board of Adjustments. Are we storing contractors' equipment storage at the facility?
Do you guys want to answer that one?
Because that would be a conditional use under C3.
Fahar Janeja, Gulfstream Development, 7815 Farm Spring Drive, Prospect, Kentucky. Sorry.
You got to repeat it
Would you like me to Fahar Janeja, Gulfstream Development, 7815 Farm Spring Drive, Prospect, Kentucky, 40059. Our anticipation of the type of tenants here are flooring contractors, paint contractors, electricians, plumbers, that kind of thing. So they would have, I don't know that there would be heavy equipment. They would be potentially pipe or flooring material or tile or things like that. They'd have parking in the front, and that's kind of the retail side showroom where outside customers would park and look, and then they'd have other things in the warehousing in the back. So I can't speak to if that specific use needs a waiver or not. I'll leave that
Well,
to.
let me ask our legal counsel. Would it be left up to the tenants at that point to come in? Because I guess you're not selling these, you're going to lease them to the,
That's correct.
would it be the tenants coming to the Board of Adjustment to say, I want a conditional use to store lawn landscaping equipment, backhoes, whatever?
Well, I think yes and no. So the application typically requires that the property owner sign. So the tenant might make the application, but the property owner is going to have to sign off on that application.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because there are a few, I would assume, contractors, commerce type buildings, commercial buildings around, parks.
And I would say to the extent when we get to the point where construction's already been completed and now we're filling the spaces, if that is an issue that happens at the time, of course, I think we'd all be in agreement at this point that that would be an appropriate, if it is appropriate at that point, to go ahead and make that request of the Board of Adjustments at that time.
So let's move to your waiver. I'm trying to get to the legality of it, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm just trying to figure out what your justification was for. You mentioned that 4 or more lots, the commission can make a recommendation or waiver based on the sidewalks.
So I actually put that in because that is my understanding of the justification for why this particular type of property would be subject to the regulations. And that it's my understanding that that would be, I could be more than happy to be corrected on that. That's my understanding is that let me see, I'll pull it up actually. So here's that section of the subdivision regulation, 6.2, and where it talks about a non-residential subdivision. So that's what we're talking about here. At least that's what I believe is what we're talking about here. That's my understanding of what we're talking about here. And based upon that understanding, when it consists of 4 or more individual lots utilized for those purposes, that is the reason why it is then subject to those subdivision regulations that require those sidewalks in the first place. So again, this is my understanding of why the sidewalks are required in the first instance, and then of course how the commission then has the ability to grant waivers of that if that's the case. But again, I'm happy to be corrected by anyone on the planning and zoning staff who we worked with on this if they had a different perspective. But that was my understanding and justification. That's why I put that in there.
Does Mr. Baxter have an opinion on this? I'm not sure, because I mean, originally it was 1 lot, and it's still 1 lot. Although you pointed out there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buildings, whatever it was, but those were not lots.
Well, so I think one way we were looking at this is 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 are all separate sections in Article 6. And Article 6 is non-residential subdivisions. So that's where we're going originally. And then we're skipping down to 6.3, is it F? So we're not even really looking at 6.2 as far as when we say we're requiring the sidewalks. It's more that it's part of Article 6.
Because it's the first time I think it's ever come to the planning commission like this, correct?
What's that?
Is this the first time we've asked for a waiver?
I don't.
No, not in the planning commission,
for
but
something
in this particular
specifically.
instance where,
Well, no, there was, Summit Parks was a residential subdivision, so it's not necessarily the same.
Yeah, we've had a couple come in for subdivision type developments. Coterie at Dennison Lane wanted sidewalks just on one side because they were going to only develop one side of the street. When we had this conversation, I personally, and I can go ahead and I raised my right hand earlier, don't particularly care for when we piecemeal the sidewalks together. I think that's a crazy idea. We had an apartment complex on 146 that I called and said, why in the world do you have sidewalks to nowhere? And he's like, well, you all made me put them in. Why would we do that? Because by the time we start to piecemeal an entire sidewalk project together, that sidewalk is in disrepair and needs to be fixed. So we have all these little sections of sidewalks to essentially to nowhere. So it doesn't make any sense from that aspect of, well, one day we might have sidewalks and we just have to piecemeal. Well, those are going to have to be replaced. Or, as he said, if there's a widening project, you make somebody put a sidewalk in and a year later we're tearing it back up for no reason. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And essentially it also encourages walkability to, if you've got a sidewalk that comes out on a road and then it goes to nowhere, you then encourage people to either walk in the grass or walk on the roadway, which is dangerous. And so I personally would prefer, in these instances, I would love to see us, and developers and attorneys get mad when I say a system development charge like Jefferson County's got. But, see, they all looked up like, no, don't say that. But to put money in a pool if you're a development, and then that goes towards those projects when the time is right. We're not to that point, but that's kind of the reason why we started this conversation and said, well, ask for a waiver from that regulation to then not have to require you to put the sidewalk in, for that reason. So that's kind of why we're here, and the waiver is asked for was a little bit of talk between us to go, we don't see a reason. And it's also, it's a non-residential subdivision, which we even had, comments of, is a non-residential subdivision and an apartment complex, because it's not a subdivision. It's not a residential neighborhood where we would think sidewalks would need to be required. This is essentially a contractor park, like they stated. There's not going to be a lot of people there during the day. There's not going to be a lot of people that are going, oh, I want to go for a walk on my lunch. So that's kind of the reason why we're here, and probably why you haven't heard something like this in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I only have one more question for the rear buildings. Are they enclosed or are they opened? Enclosed. So
I'm saying enclosed. I'll just go ahead and make sure it's stated on the record.
Thank you. Any additional questions by the commission? Yes, Ms. Kraus.
This one's for you. Did I understand you right? You said they would not have to redevelop this whole plan for the sidewalk? Because
I said
of
that might be the case,
easement?
because, again, I think that if the project's being developed on the private property outside the right-of-way, so if we request the sidewalk be put in the right-of-way, I don't see how the two conflict.
Okay.
So
Because-
I'm not doing the design, but
Right.
I don't think that those would conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Allen, did you have a question?
One more sidewalk question. I agree we don't want sidewalks to nowhere, so has a sidewalk requirement already been, I guess, waived from the adjacent properties on either side of it? How do they?
Well, the adjacent properties aren't developed yet. So the intent would be when those properties
They would have to ask for
come
the
in,
waiver also?
they would either build it, ideally, or ask for a waiver. And it's kind of similar to even looking at a residential subdivision, which has been referred to or referenced. Typically, those sidewalks are built by each lot builder. The contractor doesn't come in and build sidewalk on both sides of the roadways in the entire residential subdivision. As each lot's built, each home builder builds the sidewalk on that section. So it takes a while, but ultimately, and there are some you might look at, I'm trying to think of Poplar Woods and some other relatively older subdivisions that have a couple lots that have not developed, and you've got a little discontinuity. But ultimately, you've provided almost all the sidewalk over time.
Well, if a waiver is granted in this case, then it really supports and encourages waivers all down the line, right?
I would agree.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Hampton.
Just for my clarification, counsel, maybe I'm hearing this wrong, but I'm conflicted. I thought you said if sidewalks had to be put in, the whole thing would have to be reconfigured.
That was my understanding. However, I'm also happy to defer to Mr. Silliman's statement about it being in the right-of-way that may not impact that. Of course, we're still in the in the development phase as opposed to construction phase. That it was my understanding. However, I don't want to say that that is an absolute. That was my understanding, which is a part of my justification for why that. But Mr. Silman has pointed out that if they're being asked to put in the right-of-way and that doesn't impact, then that may not, in fact, be the case where they would have to fundamentally redraw everything. So again, that would be a discussion point during construction. At least that would be my understanding that back and forth would happen. And I've got some additional thoughts on sidewalks if we want to talk about it, but I'll save that, Madam Chair, for the rebuttal time. But that was my understanding based on my understanding of how the layout was done. However, again, this was Mr. Silman has pointed out that there may be an alternative reason why that's not the case, and I'm happy to acknowledge that may actually be the case too.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Kraus?
I appreciate the piecemealed sidewalk situation, but the other thing I think about is if it's an effort to do a sidewalk down the whole thing, then it's the taxpayers paying for that as opposed to the property owners. So, that makes me reflect a little bit. Would they be willing to look at what's been brought up about the easement, and if that did not work, put money in escrow to pay for a sidewalk at a later date?
So, Ms. Krause, this was going to be part of my rebuttal or discussion point, but I'll go ahead and just talk about it now. So I did talk to the applicant and the developers about this, and at the end of the day, part of the issue is that, unlike I would say in a subdivision where you've got a comprehensive plan of however many homes, whether it's 25, 100, whatever that is, the plan itself contemplates there are sidewalks everywhere. We don't have a comprehensive plan of what is going to be done with Commerce Parkway per se, and that there's going to be sidewalks on the south side for everything, and this would just be part and parcel of that big plan. So what we're talking about is each one of these is going to have to stand on its own merits. However, at this point, given the discussion of all the sidewalks, I did talk to the applicant. The applicant is willing to put money into toward the effort if that is a decision that is made by the city or the county to put the sidewalks on that side, however that comes out, and to contribute to that particular effort. So yes, I mean, there would be a discussion or there would be approval on the part of the applicant for that purpose here. If there's not a requirement to build it per se or a waiver given, they would still put money into, make sure I'm not speaking out of turn here, that they would in fact put money away for that purpose so that if there is a longer term plan to put sidewalks along the southern part of Commerce Parkway, and that's part of that process, then they would be able to contribute to that, ostensibly taking some of that burden off the taxpayers and ultimately accomplishing that goal. So yes, I think we would be willing to do that. Hopefully that addresses the sidewalk concern.
Okay, can I assume that if there's not a county-wide effort with taxpayer money involved, but we are requiring everybody on either side of them to put a sidewalk in, that you would put the sidewalk in at that point as well?
So again, if there's a citywide, or I don't know if I guess at some point it stretches out into the county and not the city, but if there's a citywide effort to put those on there at some point, of course the developer would comport with whatever the requirements of the city are. So again, we're talking about right now, the only group right now that's being asked to build a sidewalk is this particular proposal because it's the only one that's being developed. And the other developments that exist on Commerce Parkway have not put sidewalks in, by the way, including the Public Health Department of the county. So we'll go ahead and what we're talking about is we're willing to put money in for that purpose at this point to help address this issue. Hopefully that's part of a comprehensive plan to do it as part of that. But if it's not, then ideally that money sits there until such time as it may happen. And if it doesn't, then there may be some discussion way down the road about that money getting returned to the developer. I assume that that's how that would probably end up working. Just like a lot of other escrow accounts where if it doesn't work out, then the person who put it in escrow gets that money back.
Yeah, I'm just thinking at the other end, there are sidewalks from my memory. My memory may not be right, but I think there are sidewalks. So I could see as Commerce Parkway grows, eventually there would be enough to go all the way down. So that was the purpose of my question.
Okay, Mr. Fisher.
I just have a question. Maybe Jim can talk about this, but I know you answered earlier when somebody asked you about whether or not there's a plan to do a shared use path on the south side of that road. Is there anything at all in the Commerce Parkway traffic study that was recently adopted that talks about or encourages the walkability on both sides of Commerce Parkway in the future?
I don't recall it right
I
offhand.
didn't tell you I was going to
And
ask you this, so I apologize.
That's okay. No, but you know, the plan when we asked for that traffic study to be done was primarily, the goal was to identify what pavement geometry we needed, the lane configurations. We weren't looking at the pedestrian access for that specific study. Excuse me. I don't think it was approached in that study. And I'm looking at I've got it with me, and just the detail or the exhibit in it shows the proposed 3-lane section with a left turn, or a 2-way left turn lane in the center, but it doesn't go so far as to get into the potential pedestrian impact.
So I guess the other question then would be is if we're going to talk about an amount, is there an amount we need to talk about, or?
I would propose, I think the most expeditious way to do this would potentially be, since this plan has to go to LaGrange, City of LaGrange for zoning map amendment, could the amount be determined, the binding element say that there will be an amount or a fee in lieu of to be determined, and that can be agreed upon at that City of LaGrange meeting? That would give us time to come to an agreement on that amount.
Mr. Baxter, would that suffice?
Well, I think we need to get the applicants.
Yeah.
Probably need a little input from the applicant, and I think he's getting some input.
So what I was suggesting is, in order to expedite this, and one way we could take a recess and sit down and pull up construction costs for sidewalk and figure a length and try and determine a number today. Alternatively, there could be a binding element placed that says that there will be an amount agreed upon, as you discussed, and that amount we could talk about that between now and the City of LaGrange meeting, where this goes for a zoning amendment change, and that amount be determined at that time.
And I did talk to the developer about that, and they're comfortable with that, of course. That amount to be determined, obviously, based on a number of factors. But yes, they would be okay with that. I don't know if that addresses the situation of a binding element, and hopefully addresses the situation of the sidewalks as well.
So just from a procedural standpoint, are you withdrawing the application as it relates to the sidewalks and proceeding on the other portions of your application?
Well, so that's a great question, because if they withdraw the waiver, then the default is they have to build the sidewalk. And what we're actually talking about is not building the sidewalk, but putting money toward a potential building of a sidewalk at some point. So I do have a little bit of concern about withdrawing the request, only because the default then requires them, as part of it, to actually build the sidewalk first. Because again, that would be the default. In order for it to move forward, that would be the default requirement. So I suppose my request would be that I don't know if we can do a contingent waiver, for lack of a better term, but a waiver basically on this front, but then a binding element on the development plan that says that in order, the approval is contingent upon the expenditure of money into an escrow account for the use of potential sidewalks in the future, depending on the city's usage and what the city determines to be that amount. So that would just be I don't mean to throw a wrench in it, but that would be my concern, is that if we don't get the waiver, then we have to, by default, put the sidewalks in first, and we've essentially eviscerated the issue that we're talking about here. That would just be my concern.
Yes, Mr. Hampton.
Can't we just move forward on this as it's proposed, and then if LaGrange brings this up, it can be handled there? I mean, it seems like we're muddying the water just a little bit. It is in the City of LaGrange.
True. I mean, I think we can go forward with what it is. If they're not opposed to putting that binding element in with the development plan to say that money will be placed in escrow for the construction of sidewalks in the future, an amount agreed upon prior to the LaGrange City Council hearing, then they can
Right.
work on that over the course of the next month and a half or 2 months
Let's not
to
make
figure
it
out.
more complicated
that.
than it has to be, is all I'm saying.
Right. We like to do that sometimes, though, Mr.
Thank you.
Hampton. One other thing, I just want the developer to be aware. Anna did mention this in her presentation about a landscaping and lighting plan would be required. I want to note that because on the plans, it appears that the parking on the northwest corner has 16 spaces, I believe, in there, and that does not meet our ILA requirement. So I want to make sure that you all are aware that either that needs to change prior to the landscaping plan, or that's something that you all would need to ask for a waiver from. So just make sure that that's done prior to the landscaping filing. So I think you can only have 10 spaces between each ILA, so just make sure you're following that.
And we've noted that. We'll make sure that that's part of that deal.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Douglas.
The only thing we didn't talk about, and it goes back to landscaping, I noticed on the developmental plan, but I did not see it anywhere on there, about a proposed fence around the facility. It's on the legend, but I don't see it.
Okay, Jason Baker. There will be gates. It's kind of hard for me to point.
I know it's on the
Okay, here we
plan,
go, yeah.
the gates.
So there will be gates here on both sides. And then this entire outer perimeter will be, the buildings themselves serve as a block, but there will be gates around these enclosed areas. This entire rear yard will be enclosed for security reasons.
So the back of the buildings and side of the buildings will not be fenced?
I don't believe that's the plan. I mean, it's more of a, the grades of everything also kind of factor into there. They certainly could be, they could put a fence all around the bottom, but the intent initially is that there would just be fences put around here, maybe, and filling in this gap, but
So you don't propose to see any outside storage of vehicles?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions by the commission? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the rebuttal by the applicant.
As a practical matter, Madam Chair, I think we've already talked about and gone back and forth on this, so I don't have anything additional at this point to rebut.
All right, don't go far. Seeing that we had no oppositions, though there is no rebuttal by the opposition or final statement by the opposition, we will move on to final statement of the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the commission, again, appreciate your time on this front. Appreciate and apologize to you all for any confusion that I might have personally caused in terms of this particular plan. That is not my intention, of course, to do that in any way. So again, hopefully we'll be able to work out that particular issue between now and assuming that you all approve it, which I don't want to presuppose. But if that were the case, then we would certainly want to work with staff to make sure that that issue on the sidewalks gets addressed before the LaGrange City Council meets. But what we are asking for today and for you all to consider are, again, these three proposals that we have. The first one being that you all consider an amendment to the zoning map to designate the parcels located at 1000 block of Commerce Parkway as C3 from the current designation of R2, on the basis, again, that it comports with the comprehensive plan and because the classification is inappropriate as it currently sits. And then the second request is that the development plan for this project be approved because in addition to the points outlined above, it complies with the comprehensive zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and would include, again, that element that we talked about regarding the parking and escrow. And then the third one would be that you grant the application of the waiver that we have put forward, simply because, again, the concern is if that is not the case, then the default is they have to put the sidewalk in now, and in any discussion about a broader plan at some point down the future becomes moot, and any further changes to the area may impact that as well. I would argue that it You're creating a sidewalk to nowhere as it currently stands as a default, because the regulations are already met by the existing walking trail sidewalk along the northern side, which is consistent with what those waiver might in fact be based upon. So I would again submit that those are the reasons why a waiver in this case would be appropriate, subject to that additional consideration that we've already talked about with regard to the development plan. And with that, Madam Chair, I believe we, again, appreciate your time, appreciate all the comments and questions, and yield back any time I might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point, we're closing public comment. And do we have any discussion by the commission at this time? Mr. Fisher, if you can frame up
I'll do my best.
motions.
So you have 3 motions before you today. The first one is the zoning map amendment. This would be either a recommendation to approve or deny to the LaGrange City Council. Starts on page 3 in your staff report. The proposed binding elements for that include the approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office, and the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. You want me to do all 3 of these or one at a time?
Let's do one at a time.
Okay.
All right, any questions by the commissioners? All right, the floor is open for a motion. Ms. Kraus.
Regarding docket PZ 25025, I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the LaGrange City Council of the zoning map amendment because the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate, and the proposed zoning is appropriate because of similar zoning classifications of the surrounding properties and current supporting infrastructure. Proposed binding elements would be the approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There should be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office. And the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval.
Mr. Baxter, is that a good motion?
We have a valid motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Davis? All right, we're going to take a voice vote. Ms. Edgar?
Ms. Davis? Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Motion is approved by a vote of 10-0. And now our second.
All right, the second one is the preliminary development plan. Once again, on page 3, your staff report, towards the bottom, you have suggested motions to approve or deny the preliminary plan. You've heard evidence and testimony today presented on that. And then if you flip over to page 4, you have the proposed binding elements that were included in your staff report, and there'll be a couple additional ones added on here. So I'll try to talk slow for Ms. Edgar to be able to write these. But those proposed binding elements include the approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office. The plan must comply with all established federal, state, county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. Number 4, a landscaping and lighting plan will be required to be approved at staff level prior to construction plans. And then number 5, money shall be placed in escrow for the potential future construction of sidewalks and an amount agreed upon prior to LaGrange City Council hearing for the zoning map amendment.
And just for the record, Madam Chair, we are agreeable with those additional binding elements.
Thank you.
One clarification, and this won't be an issue for you, but when you said the amounts to be agreed upon in consultation with the county engineer or with your office, I mean, who's doing the agreeing, I guess, is we ought to be clear about.
I think the city of LaGrange should be included in that discussion, planning staff and engineering.
All right, any questions about the motions by the commission? Mr. Douglas.
Should the waiver come before the developmental plan? Because we're stating that complies with all zoning regulations, and because we're going to do the waiver last, so are we just going to say contingency that? So should we take the waiver first or take the developmental plan for second?
Well, I mean, this is the order we typically do them in, but, I mean, I don't,
That's why I keep asking the same question.
Is there a difference? The sidewalk requirements.
I mean, if we just included the sidewalk requirement in the binding elements, I think that takes care of it. So we're going to table the wait, what do you want to do? Do you want to table it?
No, only because, again, if we approve the development plan, we can't go anywhere until a waiver is granted because, again, the default is the sidewalk has to be built. So I guess I don't disagree that we probably do the waiver first, and assuming that passes, again, with the understanding that we would agree to put the money in for a future potential sidewalk plan, that would probably make sense.
If I'm doing it that way, I just would ask that you don't make me read all 5 of those again verbatim for when we get to that point. Okay, so disregard everything I just said. We'll go to the waiver request now. This will be the next motion before you. Once again, this is on page 4. You've got motions to approve or deny the waiver. And the potential condition of approval is the waiver shall only apply to the plan reviewed at the December 9th, 2025 Planning Commission public hearing.
Any questions by staff or by commission regarding the next motion? All right, seeing none, I will open the floor for a motion.
I'll take a run at it. As to docket PZ 25-025, I would move that the waiver request be granted, subject to the financial consideration that has been previously discussed, and based on evidence and testimony given today.
Mr. Baxter.
Just to be clear, the financial consideration you're referencing is the applicant's willingness to contribute to an amount to the construction of sidewalks. Should it be so required by the city of LaGrange after consultation with planning staff, the county engineer, and folks at the city of LaGrange?
I concur.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And for the record, we would agree with that amended binding element.
Thank you.
Can I have a question at this point? Okay. I assume I can.
Go for it.
So the way that was worded, that's leaving it to the city of LaGrange to decide whether or not a sidewalk is needed? Or are we leaving it for the amount to be set?
Based on what I heard and if you'll clarify, is the
It's-
amount?
It's the amount, yes, absolutely.
The amount, okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Thank you.
And do you agree with the second?
Yes, I concur with that as a second, yes.
And do we have agreement?
For the Fisher record, yes.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes,
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes. Motion is approved on a vote of 10-0. And our last motion.
Okay, so now we go back to the preliminary development plan. Once again, at the bottom of page 3, on to page 4 of your staff report. You've got motions to both approve or deny, and that includes the 5 proposed binding elements that I read about 6.5 minutes ago.
All right, do we have any questions by commission regarding the motion? Seeing none, I will open the floor for a motion.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
As to docket PZ-25-025, I make a motion to approve the preliminary plan because it complies with objectives LU1-1, LU3-1, BI1-2 of the comprehensive plan, the zoning regulation, and the subdivision regulations, and based on evidence and testimony given today. My motion also includes the binding elements as previously read by Mr. Fisher.
We have an adequate motion, Chairman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Davis? And we will head to a voice vote.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Ms. Davis? Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Motion approved on a voice vote of 10-0. This concludes docket PZ-25025. All right, yes. We have a request for a 5-minute break. Everybody ready? Okay. 5 minutes. All right, we're coming back from our 5-minute break, and we will head to our next docket. Ms. Edgar, you will read our...
Docket PZ-25-033. An application has been filed by Key Homes LLC for a zoning map amendment and development plan on property located at the 3604 and 3608 West Highway 146 LaGrange. The property is 0.36 acres and currently zoned R2 Residential District and C1 Local Business District with a proposed zoning of R4 Residential District.
Super. Before we start, Ms. Barge, I do want to recognize Mr. Fisher has excused himself for this docket, and you will be wearing a couple hats today.
Yes.
So we will start with your staff presentation.
It's more exciting when I wear two hats rather than one. Yes, Key Homes LLC is the applicant, and this is two parcels that they plan on consolidating into one. So that's why you have the two addresses and the two zoning. And this is the docket that Ms. Edgar just read. So the existing zoning on one of the parcels is R2 residential, and on the other parcel is C1 commercial. The proposed zoning is R4 residential, and the land use is undeveloped, and the parcels combined are 0.36 acres. So these are the two parcels in question. This is the north, heading towards the existing apartments right here, and then the jail is down the road to the east on 146. And these are the two parcels in question. So you can see that there are two structures here. Those have since been torn down, and I'll go into that in the site history. So you have C3 zoning to the north, R4 zoning to the north, R2A as well, and some R2 zoning. And here's that parcel with C1, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this may have been used as like a hair salon or something at some point. And then you have the industrial zoning here, and this PUD is the Buckner Crossings PUD. If you keep going south, you'll eventually get to the to Commerce Parkway and the Buckner Kroger. So in May of 2025, a demolition permit was filed for the property located at 3608 West Highway 146. And then in June, they filed a demolition permit for the other property, 3604 West Highway 146, and the buildings on both properties have been demolished. So the neighborhood meeting was on October 21st, with the technical review committee meeting being on November 19th, and the agenda was posted to the county website on October 30th, with adjoining property owner notices mailed on November 19th, and the public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on November 20th, and the sign was posted, or it's two signs, posted to the property on November 25th. So the future land use map, and for the current one and the future one, is commercial. And then the proposed plan meets all the standards in the Oldham County zoning ordinance except for the variance, which that variance request will go through the Oldham County Board of Adjustments later this month. So here's that future land use map. They have everything in this area as being commercial except for this PUD that's in the south. And I included the TRC comments in your packet. So the applicant is seeking a zoning change from R2 Residential District to C1 Local Business District to R4 Residential District to allow for a proposed 5-unit apartment complex. According to Zoning Ordinance 090-010, the purpose of R4 Residential District is to allow for higher density residential uses and low intensity non-residential uses, which are served by adequate infrastructure while maintaining the unique character of the neighborhoods at densities up to 16 units per acre. The district is used to encourage a wide variety of residential opportunities. The proposed apartment complex has 5 units across 2 stories, and it's one building with the total building size of 7,500 square feet. According to Zoning Ordinance 090-020, the maximum density intensity is 16 units per acre when sewers are present, and sewers are present at this lot. The dwelling units per acre for this plan is 13.8. Additionally, the applicant has applied for a rear yard setback variance, which will be considered at the Oldham County Board of Adjustments meeting on December 18th. So I put 2 signs on the property because they are changing from those 2 different zoning districts, and they're 2 different properties. So I felt it was appropriate to put a sign on each of these. This is looking south towards the railroad. So here's that property. This is looking more in the direction of the jail. So here is the plan proposed. I just did a little bit more zoomed in version. You have the big version in your packet. And so this is looking in the opposite direction. So we're looking, this is looking south, just like the pictures I took. And the existing apartments are across the street right here. So this is Highway 146. The prison is the jail is this way, and I guess prisons too. But anyway, and then the railroad's in the rear. So they have this one building right here and the parking right there and a proposed detention area right here. So this is the existing zoning ordinance for R2 and what's allowed in R2. And then C1 and what's allowed in C1. And then this is what they're proposing, R4. And what's allowed in R4. So as you can see, R4 is a little bit less of usage that's allowed than C1. So in summary, they have filed for a zoning map amendment on the 0.3 acres to go from R2 and C1 to R4 residential district. So here's that zoning map amendment request. And the proposed binding elements are the same three that we saw in the last case. These are a standard 3 for zoning map amendment. So you have the plan, the approval only applies to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and the engineer's office. And lastly, the plan must comply with all federal, state and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at time of construction plan approval. And then for the preliminary development plan that they're requesting approval of is for the 5-unit apartment complex. So the first 3 are the same as the last one. And then we also added number 4, which is the applicant must obtain a rear yard setback variance from the Oldham County Board of Adjustments. Number 5, a landscaping and lighting plan will be required at time of construction plan submittal. And number 6, a consolidation plat will be required before construction plan approval so that those 2 properties are consolidated into one. And then they can meet all the other setback requirements. So, and just a little note on that landscaping plan, and I can maybe let other staff speak to it, but for the detention area, there's no landscaping allowed in that area. And those are the 2 items that they've requested.
Thank you. Additional staff, Mr. Silman.
For the plan or for
Thank you. Again, Jim Silliman, Oldham County Engineer. This lot, as Anna said, is about, I think it was 0.36 acres. So it's somewhat unique when I say that they will still require the stormwater quality management and erosion control permit and KYR 10 permit from our office, because normally that's reserved for developments that are greater than an acre. But the reason we were requiring that is because there's also requirements in our subdivision regulations that state, and within the state regulations that state if a project is part of a greater or larger common plan of development that's greater than an acre, then it requires those. So because this is associated with the recently constructed apartment complex, Oldham Point, across the street, we're considering them one common plan, and therefore we're requiring the stormwater quality management and erosion control permit and KYR 10 permit for this development on the other side. Similarly, and they've shown it on their plan, a small detention basin. Of course, that'll be designed to accommodate the requirements of our stormwater runoff ordinances, including the water quality requirements. And the state has mentioned in their comments at TRC, the state also we require the 2, 10, and 100-year storm be addressed. They require the 24 or 25-year storm also be addressed, so that would be included in that. Anna mentioned the landscaping buffer area, and what that comment refers to is looking at the plans, the landscaping buffer area overlaps. Let's see if I can find it. Overlaps the detention area. So I think during construction plan approval and landscaping plan approval, that would be conducted by planning and zoning staff, will coordinate with the engineers to ensure that landscaping is not in the basin. We typically don't have that in the basin, trees or other landscaping, because we don't want leaves, and it becomes a maintenance issue. But this is a preliminary designed for that basin, so it may become smaller than that. Again, just wanted to point out that we'll coordinate that issue during construction plan review. During TRC, I think one of the most notable comments we had was with regard to asking the applicant to add the right-of-way for Kentucky Highway 146 and some reference to the opposite project, the project on the other side of the street. Just with regard to thinking of future projects or improvements to 146. We know that the 393 realignment project, latest update from the cabinet, the transportation cabinet, is that that project should be let for construction in the next couple of months. So how does that affect this project potentially? Well, looking at the preliminary plans we have for that project, they don't show any impact on this property. That project, the improvements to 146, actually stop around this area, so it doesn't get to this point. Similarly, for the railroad realignment, it'll be temporary for that construction. So we don't see any impact from that project. And while the plans that I have are preliminary, they're not final. We're not aware of any easements or any other encroachments required for that project on this property, and they're not reflected on this plan. So I think we're pretty confident in that statement. The other thing I looked at was KYTC recently got a consultant on board hired a consultant to start a study of Kentucky Highway 146 all the way from 329B, Veterans Memorial Parkway, to 393. So that study is a long section, but it stops west of here. So again, we're not even looking into this portion. So that's why we didn't pursue any additional discussion on those potential improvements. It's because looking at the 393 realignment and that KYTC study, we don't see anything in the very near future that would affect this. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff?
Mr. Engineer. So can I get you, you're under oath.
Yes, sir.
So they're going to start construction on the realignment and underpass in the next 2 months.
Start construction in 2 months? No, sir.
That's what you
Construction
said.
letting means that they get a contractor to bid on it.
Okay.
And then there's typically a few months after that they go through their paperwork, get that under. But
So this could be another 20 years?
No, sir.
Okay.
Construction letting we've been told that they would let it in the January 2026 letting.
Well,
so,
I've heard that since 1982.
Yes, sir, you have.
Since 1982.
I can only report what I'm told recently.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Mr. Solomon. I think I heard you correctly on KYTC. Did they mention about the alignment of the entrance to Oldham Point, I guess it's called, across the street?
Oh, that's a good point.
There's a misalignment on the plan, so I can't imagine
KYTC had several comments. And one of their notes in their email to planning staff, and I think it's probably included in your TRC notes, was that theirs was not a final review, that it would also come back for further review for the encroachment permit, because they will have to get an encroachment permit for this from the state. So my thought is that they potentially could require this entrance be realigned or made to align with the opposite entrance at that time. It's their route. They maintain this, so that would be up to them to determine.
So could it potentially, with the direct alignment, would that change anything on the plan that you think of, that you see here? I'll ask their engineers, because the building is kind of like a fourth of the way, or
it gets very close to the building. You're correct. So I think that's something for their engineer to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hayes?
Is this enough parking? It says it's 5 units, but it doesn't give a breakdown of unit counts. So I just didn't know if that was enough spots, considering 2 of them are reserved for handicap.
For the parking requirements, they do meet our parking regulations that are in our zoning ordinance. I would have to double check on what the actual standard is. Usually for commercial, I know it's usually based on employees or square footage of the building. But yeah, they have 10 spaces that are required. 7 on the min and 10 on the maximum. So we do have maximum parking requirements, so people don't have like extra large Walmart size parking lots for developments of this size.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we will move into the presentation by the applicant. If you have anyone you would like to swear in, we will do so at this time as well.
Madam Chair, we do. We'll go ahead and do that now. Yes, ma'am.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Mr. Baxter, Ms. Edgar, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Swansburg, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange with the law firm of Swansburg and Smith. And I've got the honor this morning of representing Key Homes LLC, which is the owner and applicant of this particular property, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So you're going to see a very similar presentation to what we just covered, with obviously some specific changes based upon the fact that it is a different project than what we did look at. But in many ways, there's going to be some overlap. So we're going to hear some similar statements here. And I do want to, the applicant is going to talk a little bit when I'm done about kind of his general vision for this particular property, just to give you all an understanding of what ultimately he's wanting to accomplish through this as well, which I think is important. So let's talk about the request. Again, you've seen this image already, but we're talking again about 2 requests in this case. The first request would be an amendment of the Oldham County zoning map for the parcels, as we already talked about, located at 3604 and 3608 West Kentucky Highway 146, from R2 and C1 to R4. So again, this one is currently R2, this one is currently C1, but we're talking about having both of them be changed to R4. There was a discussion, at least in a binding element, about a consolidation of them into one particular plat, so that obviously would be contemplated as part of this process as well. And then the second request would be to improve the proposal to develop that parcel into a new 5-unit apartment building across from the existing Oldham Point apartments. I do want to make sure I point out something just as a clarification, and is that although there is an effort, and again, the applicant will talk more about this, although there is an apartment complex going in across the street from Oldham Point, it is not a phase 2 of Oldham Point. Is in fact not actually affiliated with Oldham Point. It would be a distinctly separate entity. So there's not any mutual sharing of facilities. For example, there aren't benefits or amenities by virtue of the construction here that may in some way be shared across the street with Oldham Point. So it's not necessarily a phase 2 across 146 from the existing Oldham Point. It's simply another apartment complex that happens to be located across from Oldham Point. So I want to make sure that that was clarified from the developer's perspective on this. We actually were able to get together a rendering that has a little more color to it, I guess if you want to call it that. I do see there's a tree on top of if that's what we're talking about in terms of the encroachment on the detention basin. Certainly that's an issue that will be talked about as part of the construction phase, if that is in fact something that happens after you all, hopefully from our perspective, approve these particular requests. But this is, again, we flipped it around, and I apologize in terms of flipping it back and forth. There's different ways to look at this. This actually looks at it from the perspective of, essentially, might you look at it on the map, which is you've got the CSX line that runs to the south, you've got Kentucky 146 to the north, and then you've got this particular development. We've seen it the opposite way as well. But this is the same development. It's just flipped 180 degrees down here and then put color in it as well. Guiding standard, again, I always say that because I'm a lawyer and this is what I do. You know, at the end of the day, Kentucky state law provides that before any map amendment is granted, like the one we're asking for, the Planning Commission must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one or more of the following apply. And in this case, we're going to talk about B instead of A today. and that is that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan, and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. KRS 100.213, sub 1B. A comprehensive plan, and Mr. Fisher's not here to see this anymore, but I want to put it in there and say goodbye, everyone. My understanding it's leaving. So this is the last we're going to see of this particular comprehensive plan update. Sorry to see it go, but not sorry to see you leave. Proposal adheres to the old, I would say the old at this point has not been approved yet, but this is the current comprehensive plan, and it does in these particular ways. Land use objective LU-2-1, which encourages connectivity between neighborhoods and compatibility with adjacent development. What we're talking about here is a project that will ensure compatibility with adjacent development, i.e. it is going to be similar to developments that already exist in this particular area with the Oldham Point Apartments across the street, even though, again, they are not, in fact, affiliated. There's not a phase 2 of that particular subdivision, but it is consistent. It is compatible with that subdivision across the street from it. Subsection 4 also talks about expressly identifying a goal that housing in Oldham County should include efforts to provide an appropriate mix of housing types and opportunities to meet the needs of all people in this county. And this project provides an alternative housing source for individuals who are looking outside those traditional single-family home models. And there is nothing wrong with the single-family home model in this county. We do it all the time. It's perfectly appropriate. However, we believe that this particular project also provides another form of housing in this county that we believe is needed. And that is, again, a basis for why you might approve this. Land use objective LU-2-3, which encourages affordable housing opportunities within all areas of Oldham County. So again, it's not just what we're talking about, multi-million-dollar homes sitting on big lots. The comprehensive plan also encourages the development of more affordable housing, and that includes, we believe, higher density projects like this particular apartment complex. It is designed to create a new affordable housing option through multi-unit structure across from the existing Oldham Point. Again, this is all part of and I'll let the developer talk more about this, but it is another building in an area that is already witnessing this particular type of change. This is a rendering from the engineer of what the proposed complex might look like. Understanding, of course, that there are some finalities that need to be done to it, but just so you get an understanding of what it might look like. Lots of people want to see, well, what is it going to look like, right? And so this is for both your benefit and the public. This is a rendition of what it might, in fact, look like at the end of the day. And again, I just bring that back up. In terms of, again, according affordable housing opportunities, that structure we just looked at, again, is the goal at the end of the day, and what type of affordable housing structure we might have here. So let's talk about changes to the surrounding community, right? That's one of those bases that we talked about. We talked about the comprehensive plan and how this particular proposal meets or is compatible with the comprehensive plan, but the statute also provides that you can find that if there are changes to the community such that the proposal in many ways then is warranted or should be supported, that those should also be considered as part of an approval. So let's talk about the changes in the community. I was able to find on Google Maps here a picture from this area back in 2018. This is what it looked like in 2018. This is 146 looking west, and you've got the detention center, at least at that point, the very new detention center behind you, and you've got single-family homes right now that are stretched along this particular stretch of Kentucky 146 right now. This is what it looked like in 2018. Single-family homes, single detached, lots, individuals, to that extent, right on Kentucky 146. So the current zoning classification. So what we looked at it was what it was at the time, with the exception of the changes, I believe up here, you all may have changed that at some point after that 2018 photo. The zoning map identifies a parcel, like we said, at 3604 as C1 in dark blue, while the parcel 3608 is R2 in yellow. And the parcel directly across the street from both of these is zoned presently as R4. So we've got right now R4 zoning across the street that has been built for high density residential purposes. And that's what we're talking about doing as well down here for these particular parcels, as we've talked about a couple of times. But what happened in 2018? How did the environment change in 2018? Well, first off, the Oldham County Detention Center opened in 2018, just 400 feet from the property line of the proposed development. right? So we've got a picture of the detention center here. It's just right down the road. So that is something that changed in terms of that area. So it's not just you've got single family homes and then all of a sudden you got the Kentucky State Reformatory or maybe a couple of small businesses along the way here. Now you've got the detention center that opened up along this area. So that starts to be a bit of a change. And we talked about Oldham Point, but here's a picture of Oldham Point. This is also a change that occurred between 2018 and today. They did build R4 high-density apartment buildings on KY 146 during that stretch that I showed you on the photo since 2018. So this area, like I said, was opened and developed and opened very recently. And then I would just kind of talk about the idea that due to demographic and economic makeup of Oldham County, which we believe it's focused traditionally on single-family subdivisions, that's what most people who are not in Oldham County tend to associate with Oldham County. It's a bedroom community, right? So we've got these nice subdivisions. We've got this amazing school system. That's why people like to come out here in many ways. That's kind of, for individuals who live outside Oldham County, that is the view of Oldham County. But what we're talking about here is also some changes in the demographic makeup of Oldham County such that that cannot be the only way people live here anymore. We need to find, and this is an opportunity to give that change for new affordable housing options needed to what I would say are younger single individuals or newly married couples, individuals who want to move into this county but may not be able to afford it at this point. May not be able to. It's a great county to live in. Lots of people want to move here, but not everyone, unfortunately, can afford to live here right now. So the idea is for those individuals, to give them an opportunity to get their foot in the door here, to become Oldham Countians, to pay taxes here, to put their kids in school here, and then be able to move into those nice single-family homes that we talked about that are being built or are being used otherwise here in Oldham County. Talk about the big picture. Let's zoom back a little bit. And again, we talk about where we are. So here's the proposed development right here. Here's Kentucky 146. That's the Oldham County Detention Center, as I was talking about. Again, 400 feet from the property line, just right down the street here. This didn't exist. It was just opened in 2018. And then we've got Oldham Point, which was opened here very recently, right across the street. It does, in fact, reflect the needs, we would argue, of a growing diverse population base in Oldham County and provide, again, a means of increasing not only residential options, but I would submit increased tax revenues, which is important for the county, without sacrificing quality in construction or property management. This is not going to be, and I'll let the developer talk more about this, but this is not going to be a situation where you're putting up a building that's an eyesore, where you're going to put up something where people are going to look at it and go, this is not what we want to look like here in Oldham County in terms of our residential structures, right? We want to maintain that level, that this is a great place to be, and it's a place to be for a long time, not a place that gets put up and then in a couple of years is going to be dated and falling in disrepair. This is an applicant who, again, we'll talk about this, but this is their vision as well, is to maintain this type of high quality residential structure of a high density nature that can be one that we're all proud of here in Oldham County. And that the project requires a zoning map amendment for 2 parcels only underscores that the transition of this area is going away from your traditional single family homes like we saw in that picture from 2018 to a higher density area. Again, there may be, and I'm not entirely privy to, and that there's some discussion about what happens with Kentucky 146 overall in the long run. I just know in the short term, again, this is what's happening here now. And the changes over with 393, et cetera, it may in fact actually cause even more change, whether it's more density. I'm not sure at the end of the day what that's going to be, but this is what we're looking at and what we're seeing, at least as of today. Additional point for clarification. It was mentioned, I just want to make sure everyone understands that for our purposes today, that in addition to the request before this body, and assuming, of course, that this body approves the present request, the applicant is scheduled to go before the Board of Adjustments and Appeals on its Thursday, December 18th meeting to seek the approval of a variance of 21 feet for your yard setback standard for R4 properties, assuming, again, that the zoning map amendment is approved today. Which is set forth in section 090020 of the ordinance. Just for everyone's benefit, to the extent they're looking at it, here's the building right now. This is where under the current standard, this is where the line would, for construction purposes, would end. And so they are seeking a variance to allow the building to be constructed within this particular section of the parcel. Again, that's not before this body, but I did want to highlight it as, and to the extent that someone's looking at the plan and wondering about that, I did want to point it out for everyone's education and benefit that that is something that they are going to seek in the next couple of, actually just next couple of days. So again, summary, there's not a whole lot more for me to talk about at this point. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant here in a second. But from my perspective, the applicant respectfully requests, again, 2 approvals. One is that there's an amendment to the Oldham County zoning map for the parcels located at 3604 and 3608 West Kentucky Highway 146 from R2 and C1 to R4 on the basis that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and which have substantially altered the basic character of the area and because of these, additionally, because of those areas in particular that identified in the comprehensive plan that we talked about, providing affordable housing options for people here in the county, in addition to all the wonderful single-family home subdivisions that we have here, and that you all approve this particular plan. This is the second request because it comports, again, with that Oldham County comprehensive plan as I've just discussed. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and stop talking. I will say that of course, we always ask if there are any questions, but I want to let the applicant share his vision with this plan for you all as well. Thank you all very much.
Buckner, 4751 Fox Run Road, Buckner, Kentucky 40010. As Mike just did a good job explaining, kind of our, how we've gotten to where we are at this point, I just wanted to add a little bit more clarification for my vision on why we did this. So we did do the Oldham Point apartment project across the street. At one time, I did own 3 of those residential houses that Mike pointed out in 2018. In fact, one of them was my old office from 1999. But as we started doing the project across the street, it became apparent, for lack of a better way of saying it, what an eyesore it was directly across the street. And so as we got further into the project and you kind of realize what investment we've made across the street, we started trying to figure out if there was an attempt to be able to acquire those properties for an effort to protect the investment we have across the street, but also continue the effort of cleaning up 146, in my opinion. And so obviously there was some history with both of those properties and they are no longer there. And so just to clarify, the project across the street is owned in an entity called Oldham Point LLC. I have 2 partners on that. This property is owned by Key Homes LLC, which is just myself. And so the idea here is to build a separate project. There, as Mike said, there will be no connectivity, no crosswalks, no shared amenities. There's a dumpster on the other side in Oldham Point. There'll be trash on this side. So everything, mailbox, everything will be completely independent of the 2 projects. That way too, just at some point in time, when the time comes to sell either or both, they could be sold either individually or separately, is kind of what our idea there is. There will be, the same level of construction, if you will, of what you saw in the Oldham Point project. So there will be some similarities in terms of use of materials and that kind of thing, but that's not for any, just don't want it to be confused that we're going to be encouraging people to, go back and forth across Highway 146. And then Derek, engineer, can point this out as well. As far as the alignment question, this development works with the entrance where it is. Obviously, it's a pretty small site, and we're obviously having to ask for the variance on the setback requirement to make this work. And conceptually, KYTC has approved that entrance where it is, especially in nature of the size of it. But I think that's a remark that they always hold until the final approval. But Derek can speak more to that if there's any more questions. So thank you all for your time.
Good morning. Derek Triplett, Land Design and Development, 503 Washburn Avenue, 40222. Billy touched on the entrance aspect, but I would just reiterate that we have received conceptual approval from Kentucky State Transportation Cabinet. On the entrance, they always reserve the right for more comments when we get to civil engineering practices, but significant comments like that would have come up with TRC if they weren't comfortable with the proposed entrance here. And the offset from the entrance across the street. As Billy mentioned, they are separate developments, so the alignment of those are not crucial to the functionality of these two separate apartment developments. From the detention basin standpoint that Mr. Silliman had brought up, what we represent here is our understanding of the application of the landscape ordinance within the zoning. So as you can see, we're not showing any plantings within that basin limit. What you see there from a tree overlapping into that, the planting itself would be outside of the easement of the detention basin, and also this is a conceptual representation of the limits of that basin. So it will ultimately be in an easement, in which case no landscaping will be permitted within that easement. So that's really all I have to add. We'd be happy to answer any more questions you all have.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the applicant? All right. Moving forward, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition of the application? All right. Seeing none, we'll move into questions by the commission. Any questions? Mr. Douglas?
I guess I'll take you.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's do a clarification real quick, because on the developmental plan, it says 10 spaces includes 1 ADA. You actually got 2, correct?
Yes, I mean, we've got 2 that are built into the plan.
You might want to make a little
Yes, sir.
correction on that one. Next, I know this is not coming to us. It's going to go to the Board of Adjustments. Did anyone talk to CSX already about the right-of-way?
Yes, in
and
fact, there was
existence?
I'll go ahead and just, I'll talk about this now if you want me to, or Ms. Barge can also talk about this. So there was some discussion. There was a question raised about encroachment on CSX, given this proximity to the rail lines. There was some email traffic back and forth between everybody. We do have the email back from CSX, which basically says at the end of the day, so long as you're not encroaching on their right-of-way, which this property is not, they don't particularly care. The only suggestion they had was, as a possibility, is during construction phase, again, assuming approval, was that possibility of putting up a 6-foot tall construction barrier during the construction phase, although my understanding is that there should not be any construction that would actually occur that might encroach on CSX's space. But that was the only discussion or concern that CSX raised. Otherwise, to the extent it stays out of the right-of-way, they have no dog in the fight.
Okay, and then at your neighborhood meeting, was there any attendance to the neighborhood meeting?
Yes,
And did you keep record of those?
I did. Was it not included in the packet?
Not for us, it wasn't. Was there any discussion by any of the residents?
So there was a resident who did show up, yes, and had some questions about that. And it was quite frankly, it was a very, very cordial meeting at the end of the day, just more or less questions, information about it. She was 2 properties over from, 2 properties to the west from this particular point. I'm fairly certain I provided that information, but I'm sorry, Commissioner, that's the case.
Staff didn't give it to us.
But I just did, yes, we did. We had a very good meeting with, there was one that showed up. She's 2 properties down. And she had some questions about it, and those questions were answered by the applicant. I will note, though, there's a number of properties that are owned by governmental entities that would fall within the surrounding area that we are required to notify in some way. And the governmental entities either would have provided information as part of TRC or didn't provide any feedback or have any concerns or questions at all. So, like I said, we did have one, and there was at least one person in attendance who had questions, and it turned out to be what we would say is a positive meeting.
Ms. Barr, do you want to come up? Was there any concerns by the
neighboring? I don't think I usually provide that, and if I do, I'm sorry, I don't remember doing that. But no, there were no concerns. It sounds like Ms. Hobbs, the neighbor, just mainly asked some questions. Just basic questions that people would ask.
No
learning
needs
about
of
them.
concerns that she didn't.
Mm-mm.
provide
And I
any
even, so, one thing he mentioned is the county jail is within 400 feet. And so I, specifically reached out to our county jailer, and he had no concerns with the project.
Okay.
And also, just for the record, I concur with everything he said about CXX and those communications. I was
Okay.
on those emails.
Maybe I can ask one more question, Mr. Swansburg. Sometimes we get it on the developmental plan, but I didn't see it on there. But was there any consultation with the U.S. Postal Service about where the placement of the box is going to be in this tight area?
I'll let the engineer talk about that one, sir.
We have not had that level of discussion with the USPS at this point. Likely, there would be mailboxes within the atrium of this building, but that level of detail has not been discussed at this point.
Okay. And then no one else has anything else. I have just one more, and that would be,
Douglas, if I can answer that question real
Sure.
quick for you. So I've already spoke to the letter carrier.
Okay.
So this is serviced out of LaGrange Post Office, and this would still be a cluster box like is required today.
Right.
And it would be somewhere in that general area where that dumpster enclosure is showing.
Okay.
What they asked for.
thank you for clarifying. I think that's all I have.
Any additional questions by the commission? Ms. Davis?
I have one question. So what size units are you going to build there? How many bedrooms and so forth there?
There are 3 units on the first floor that are all in the 1,100-ish square foot range, and there's 2 bedrooms on the second floor, and they're going to be more like 1,250 or so. So the second floor will be slightly bigger just by default of the way the design works out to get some architectural stuff to work out. So they are slightly bigger 2-bedroom units than the units across the street on average.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, this is for Anna, if I can. And this is from the newbie side of the table here, so bear with me. In our discussion, we talk about the current zoning on both parcels to be inappropriate. That's the way I've read it. And certainly one of the parcels, and I'm not sure if it's
You may go to my
06 or 08.
presentation where I have the zoning. Would that be helpful to pull up the zoning map?
No, just
Okay.
just bear with me for
Okay.
a second. You've got one parcel that is it is C1.
Mhm.
You've got another parcel which is R2, which I would concur is completely inappropriate. C1 appears to be appropriate for the size and configuration and location for this particular site. So to say both of them are inappropriate seems to be a contradiction in terms of what the comprehensive plan would show and what the development that has occurred, as Mr. Swansburg has pointed out, over the last 7 years. Most of that area has become more non-residential, more commercial in nature, and this is going backwards, in my opinion, from that. And an R4 would exacerbate the problem that R2 already presents in that area. So I just wonder if I'm reading that correctly as somebody new to the commission, and what your response to that is.
Yeah, and everyone can have their own interpretation. I'm not going to do an attorney's job of justifying their project, but just one thing to keep in mind is you can do some low intensity, professional office uses in R4, and then for C1, you do have a lot of different options that could be used. I can tell you adult entertainment establishment wouldn't be allowed there. But retail and personal service establishment could theoretically be done there. I don't know if that property was vacant, like the house that I believe was used for the beauty salon. I don't know, the demand for that location. I feel like that'd be more of a question for the chamber. But I don't know if I'm answering your question really well, because I feel like it's more of a question for the applicant to justify whether that location is appropriate or that zoning is appropriate. It's kind of an interesting area, I will say, like going back to the zoning map of having a lot of different zonings in the area. But typically when you see R4 zoning, it's closer to commercial areas versus single family is usually a little bit further away from commercial areas. So you typically put higher density housing closer to the more commercial, busier areas. Does that make sense?
Sort of. Yeah, I just have a concern that we've got what I would consider to be a properly zoned piece of property, and we're being asked to call it inappropriate. And I just think that's a contradiction to what I think the reality of the situation is.
Commissioner Miller, if I may, so we had a discussion in the prior plan about there being this discussion between appropriate and inappropriate, and that being one of the standards upon which the commission may consider a zoning map amendment. And what I'm actually saying in this case is that that's not the standard that we're talking about here. So KRS 100.213 sub 1 actually provides alternative means by which a planning commission may consider a zoning map amendment. So in the previous project we talked about earlier today, we talked about the justification for that was because the existing zoning was inappropriate and the zoning proposal was more appropriate. I don't know that we're necessarily saying in this case that the zoning is inappropriate or appropriate per se. What we're actually arguing is that the alternative option, sub B, so the appropriate, inappropriate is KRS 100.213.1A. And what we're talking about today is that this is actually KRS 100.213.1B. So again, there are alternative processes. What we're saying here, the justification for this is not necessarily considering the balance of whether or not it's appropriate, inappropriate, but has the environment around it under sub B, have there been changes in the community such that that the area has been substantially altered recently to justify this particular request? And that's what we're actually saying is that maybe at some point R2 and C1 might be appropriate in some sense, but given the totality of what's going on in this particular area of Oldham County right now, particularly with the increase in high density residential area, there was a changeover from you're not just having that single line of single family homes anymore. You've got more development going on in here that we believe under 1B, that's the appropriate basis for the commission to consider a zoning map amendment. So, I don't want to say that our justification is appropriate versus inappropriate for this particular project. Our justification is because the area around it, pursuant to sub B, is changed so much in the last couple of years that this is a good use of the property that is consistent with those changes that have occurred in the last few years. I don't know if that helps out in some way, but I just want to make sure that to clarify that our position is not appropriate versus inappropriate for this particular project. It's again, the substantial changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area were not anticipated at the time that the adopted when they first zoned those areas, and those in fact have happened in the last 8 years at this point, 7 years at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Douglas.
Could I get Mr. Doker up here just for get him on testimony? Because KRS 100.213.1-B that you're claiming, that there have been major changes in the economic, physical, or social nature. Can you just explain to us, because you're a builder, why there's such a demand for affordable housing, and what is your expertise on that?
Well, how much time do we have? So I would just, I mean, if we look at what's happened, and when we're still using COVID as a benchmark these days, but if we look what's happened in the cost of housing since the 2019-2020 timeframe to today, it's pretty astonishing. And that goes all the way to what raw land costs are, the cost of the regulatory side of what we do, the actual site development cost, and then the cost of vertical construction. And so the short answer is the cost of owner-occupied housing has just skyrocketed to a point to where, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are not able to buy a home. So that has dramatically increased the demand for the rental scenarios. I serve on our National Home Builders Board of Directors, and I was just in Denver a couple weeks ago, and the prediction for the amount of rental occupied units in this country is a big number. Single family housing is projected to grow at a 1% rate next year, where single family rental housing is projected to grow at 13%. I don't know how to fix that problem. I mean, obviously rates come down, it helps a little bit, but I don't see the bricklayer working for less tomorrow unless demand, completely plummets. So I think to further maybe tie both those questions together, as I mentioned, that where Oldham Point Apartments is built today, I had owned one of those properties since 2001, I think, or 99, one of them since 2001, and then bought the one in the middle later on. But I can tell you at one point, I had an LOI from a small box retailer that we were going to try to join those three properties together. I won't say who it was, but you can probably figure out when I say a small box retailer. When everything started happening with the realignment of 393, they neglected to go forward on their LOI, and just due to traffic patterns. And clearly, I live in Buckner, so if you look at what's happened at the exit 18, which I think is phenomenal, it has changed the traffic pattern of retail or commercial focused, I think, opportunities along that stretch of 146. So that's what pushed us over the edge to go when we came before the commission a few years ago to do the Oldham Point project, was the actual location and what we felt like and what our study showed was a need. And also what has happened. I mean, as many of you all know, we build quite a few houses a year, and we're seeing the effects of that. And so this is something that we feel is a need for the county. I can also tell you that, there's 24 units across the street, and we basically built and leased that project in 18 months and have a waiting list for units to become available. So we also currently own the one here on LaGrange, Bishop Place, and the same thing, 60 units. We're adding 8 units on right now, and those are just the 2 projects that I'm involved in, not all the other apartments, but they consistently stay full. So I don't know if that answers your question or if I gave too much information, but I mean, we need quality housing opportunities in the county, I believe.
Any other questions, commissioners? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to rebuttal by the applicant.
Madam Chair, I don't have any rebuttal at this point. I think we've talked about the issues and addressed any questions that might have come up. So I'll yield back whatever time we have on that front. Thank you.
Perfect. And seeing that we had no opposition to speak, if you'll stay there, we will skip over the rebuttal by the opposition and final statement by the opposition and move on to your final statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the commission, again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the great questions, the great feedback, information about this particular request. Like I said, at this point, we've got 2 requests for you all on this particular project. I'll just reiterate that the first one is that the commission approve an amendment to the Oldham County zoning map for the parcels located at 3604 and 3608 West Kentucky Highway 146 from R2 and C1 to R4 on the basis that, again, pursuant to sub B of that statement that I was talking about, there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. And also that we approve the development plan because it comports with the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, particularly those areas that I mentioned to you earlier, LU-2-1, we're talking about compatibility again with adjacent development. We talk about the project that is already there across the street with Oldham Point. And then we've got subsection 4, which talks about including efforts to provide an appropriate mix of housing types and opportunities to meet the needs of all people. Testimony you've heard from individuals in this case is that this is in fact a present need in Oldham County, and this is an effort to meet that particular need, and also to provide an affordable housing opportunity within all areas of Oldham County, to give people an opportunity who are not here now to get their foot in the door so that they can become part of this county, again, to put their kids in this county, to avail themselves of the benefits of living in this county, to become taxpayers in this county, and then to be able to spread that across for the benefit of all Oldham Countyans. That is just this project being a small part of that larger effort. So we again think that this does in fact comport with those parts of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan. We would ask you as our second request to approve that development on those particular bases. Again, thank you all for your time, for your questions. And since this will be the last time I talk to you all for this year, I wish everybody however you celebrate, a happy holiday season. And Madam Chair, with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Great. Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to close public comment at this time. And if Ms. Barge, will you be able to summarize our motions today that are presented for us?
This is that second hat that I'm wearing, so hopefully I don't look too goofy wearing two hats. But, pull it up. So the first thing is the zoning map amendment, and that is a recommendation of approval or denial to the Oldham County Fiscal Court. This is not in the city limits, so it'll go to the county. And the potential binding elements for these ones are our standard 3. The approval applies only to the plan presented at the December 9th, 2025 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2, there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office. And 3, the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at time of construction plan approval.
Perfect.
So
Let's
we'll
pause
start
there.
with just that one.
Let's start with that. And or commissioners, do you have any questions regarding the zoning map amendment? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion. Ms. Davis?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the change of the zoning from R2. Oh, I'm sorry.
Bring that real close to you.
I make a recommendation that we approve the zoning change to R4 from R2 to R1 because the area has changed and what is planned to go there now is more appropriate and for all the proposed binding elements that were just read.
Couple things, Ms. Davis. Number one, I think you inadvertently said R1 when you meant C1 because one of these properties is R1 and the other one is
Okay, it's R2 and C2.
R2 and C1, right? Yeah, and it's
I'm
going.
sorry, it's C1.
And it's
R2 and C1 to R4.
Perfect. And the other thing is you incorporate the testimony that you heard concerning the reasons that Mr. Swansburg put up there about the changes in the economic nature of the area, correct?
Yes, correct.
We have a valid motion then.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We'll proceed with voice vote. Roll call vote.
Mr. Miller,
No.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Elder,
Yes.
Motion is approved on a vote of 9-1. Now we shall move on to the second step, which is the preliminary plan, development plan.
Yes, the preliminary development plan for the 5-unit apartment complex. So we have the same 3 binding elements that I read before that I'm not going to reread again. And then the applicant must obtain a rear yard setback variance from the Oldham County Board of Adjustments, which they've already applied for and are scheduled for this month. And then a landscaping and lighting plan will be required at time of construction plan submittal. And then lastly, a consolidation plat will be required before construction plan approval.
And Madam Chair, just for the record, the applicant does support those additional binding elements on top of what is otherwise customary usually.
Thank you. All right, do we have any questions from commissioners on the motion? All All right, I will open the floor for a motion. Ms. Kraus?
Regarding PZ 25033, I make a motion to approve the preliminary plan. It complies with the objectives because it supports the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and the subdivision regulations. Proposed binding elements, I can read them, or I can just say the 6 that we just discussed based on the testimony I've heard today.
We have an adequate motion, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we will take a roll call vote.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas? Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Motion has been approved on a vote of 8-1, docket PZ 25-033. All right, we have other business. Oh, we got Mr. Fisher back.
All right, so real quickly, on the other business, Commissioner Nasser attended a survey presentation through, I believe, the Louisville Realtor Association. She went through 73 PowerPoint slides, which is about 60 less than what I gave you all for the comprehensive plan, so they need to up their game a little bit. She attended that on October 30th from 9 to 12, so she is asking for you all to approve those 3 hours of outside training for her, if you so choose.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Can we do a roll call vote? This is Vice Chair Douglas, asking for our voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none? Motion passed.
Thank you.
I'm sure she appreciates that.
Check that off the list.
And just,
Yeah.
Ms. Edgar, just note in the record that the chairman abstained from the vote.
And then, just real quick to close, obviously, we haven't had our filing deadline yet in December, so don't know if there'll be a January hearing for you yet, but keep your eyes or ears attuned to that, and we'll email you and notify you when and if there'll be a hearing in January. I'm sure there probably will be, but I just wanted to let you know that. And then I did send out that email with the training opportunity. I know Mr. Allen took it. On our little survey class we did, not near as great as the one that she gave me all the PowerPoints for. But if you all do watch that, it's an hour of your life that you can share to seeing really the overhead projector and then us just putting plats in front of it. But our county surveyor, Walter Denham, went over surveys. And it's got some good informative stuff in it, but we'll try to do more of that in the future and record that to make that available to you all. So if you watch that, just send us an email back. Let us know when you did that, and we can plug you into for your training record. So that's all I've got.
Perfect.
No. Yeah.
As we adjourn, just want to wish everyone happy holidays. Have a nice break with your family and enjoy the time off. Can we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second? All right, let's do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned.